and there's really no filtration process. There's no screening process. Like if a book, for instance, has to go through like an editor, there's all kinds of like barriers it goes through to sort of curate what actually is presented. A website doesn't really have that. And neither does a social media account.
Hey, everybody. We've had some of the most incredible guests coming to you these past couple of months. The amount of expertise and knowledge on these cutting edge topics is something we really hope that you enjoy. And if you do, it would make a huge difference to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe the podcast. It helps us to get more guests, better experts, and talk about all of the things that are really important to you. So give us a love, give us a lot of love, and don't forget to subscribe so you get all our new episodes. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Rachel, and I have an incredible guest for you guys today. You are going to absolutely love him. I have Dr. Ryan Sultan with me today. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. I love the name of your podcast.
I mean, right? Like, don't they? Don't they though? So I'm so excited to have you on today. I have admitted to you before we started recording that this was a total selfish interview because my interest in this topic is I can't get enough. And I honestly feel it's so timely. And I know that our audience, being the health conscious, driven audience that they are, this episode is so important for everyone's mental health. And there is no health without mental health.
Absolutely. I think that we, as a culture, something shifted in the United States during the pandemic where I think that the stigma around mental health, while it's not gone, dropped a good amount. And a lot of people started thinking about things in a different way. I think the massive temporary societal changes that occurred, I think brought about a lot of stuff for people. So I'm happy that there continues to be an interest in this, even though we're past those times. It seems like it's opened a door for people to be much more open about this than we have been certainly in the last decades.
Oh, I'm so excited that this door is finally open because having a health podcast and, just talking about your muscles is just, it's so a small part of a very much larger functioning system. So, Dr. Sultan serves as a medical director of integrative psych. So you have both pediatric and adult psychiatric concerns in your care. And you are also a professor of psychiatry at Columbia University. I am so impressed with the incredible cutting edge research that you have done in this field. First of all, just thank you because it's so important. And secondly, so much of your work has now intersected with adolescent mental health, specifically looking at the digital influences in all of our world. And I am so excited to deep dive into this because we need a phone intervention, everybody. we need one. Like, trust.
It's hard. It's sort of this thing that we talk about this term in psychotherapy called an enactment, where like both the patient and the therapist are engaging in some sort of activity that neither of them are really thinking them through. And maybe you're doing something that's a little bit of a boundary violation. You're acting too much like friends or whatnot. And I think the whole phone thing is this like enactment that we're all engaging in because we're all sort of like, this is a problem. But like we all of us struggle to talk about our own personal use, which I think is really a foundational concern. And, one of the things that, if there's only one thing that I think parents can get out of this conversation around social media and adolescence is like set an example at home with your phone use, right? Think about what your screen use is like and be aware that one, that is the thing that you're modeling. for your kids, and it's also the thing that gives you any credit, right? You don't have any street credit to tell them to put their phones down at night if everyone is also on their phones. If you're on your phone at a dinner table, what kid's not going to push back against that?
It's such an important point, and it's one of those like reminders in parenting, like, yo, you gotta fix yourself, son. You gotta fix yourself before you're fixing anybody else, because it really starts with what we're modeling. And I think that that is why this episode is so important, not only for parents, but for everyone who is feeling a little glued to their phone and wondering sort of what are some of the I mean, you tell me, if there are drawbacks, but because we have so many amazing things that have come from
Of course, right? So, like any change, it's not all good. It's not all bad, right? Uh, like it's nice having a device that you can coordinate meeting someone rather than having to plan it and you just had to show up, right? Like there was no way to reach someone. That was an amazing aspect of having a phone, being able to have live conversations with people anywhere in the world. Like this is amazing that you can go on FaceTime. I have family in South America, and like we can just pop on a video chat, and it's a much more intimate experience. To be able to use social media as I think it initially started, which was sort of connecting different groups of people, that's all great. But like any change, like there are going to be downsides, and we have to think about those, and we have to mitigate them as much as possible. And one of the ways I like to think about it is, you know, evolution is always happening. We're always changing, but it's not very fast, especially not around complicated things. And so tens of thousands of years, we're all like wandering around as like gathering and like hunting in like small groups of like 100, 150 people. And, then we moved to farming, then there was the industrial age. So a lot happened in like a 15,000 year period of our history. But what really started going kind of like the change curve started really accelerating for me is the information age, right? So in the 1990s, the proliferation of the internet, phones, like the world is changing faster and faster for people, and our minds can only keep up with that so much, and they're susceptible, right? So the devices are taking advantage of pre-programmed stuff we have in our brain, right? So when these devices were developed, they wanted them to be engaging, so they went to all the academic journals, psychology literature, and they read about how people stay engaged and what are all the tricks that you can use for that. And the system was designed to monitor that and keep you engaged. And like that's their goal, right? I mean, like these companies do not benefit from you not using their phones or not using their applications. And so we have to remember that their agenda is a little bit of a mixed one, and that some of it may not be in our individual best interests. So and that they have a little bit of an advantage. The device has an advantage over you, and that's one of the things that people have for a while now started to use the word addiction, which previously we had exclusively more for like a chemical thing, to describe the phone situation, and it's probably not inaccurate because it's probably using many of the same circuits for addiction, and certainly the same reward systems, right? Like reward, reward, reward. Now I don't have TikTok on my phone anymore, but when I did, I remember being like, God, this is like when I was a kid and I couldn't find anything to watch. Like you're just like clicking through the channels, and you actually watch nothing half the time, and some crazy amount of time has passed.
I want to talk about for a minute the sort of biology, and you mentioned the devices have the edge, and they have the edge because of the way that our brain chemistry works, the way our brain functions. And those, not that those things have been used against us, but those things have been used in a way that benefits the companies that want to keep us engaged on our phones. um, what is actually happening in the brain when we're using our phone? What is going on in there that is making these sort of quick hits when we feel that good feeling? And is it different what's happening between a child's brain or a teen or an adolescent's brain and an adult brain?
Yeah, let's start there because I think that's actually the foundational place to start. Our brains develop till about 25. If you have ADHD, it's probably more like 30. And there is still some growth and change that occurs past then, but there's a lot of big changes going on up into that, and that's actually a fairly large time period. And so during that time period, what you are exposed to is how your brain may turn out a little bit. Is how I would think about it, right? Like, let's use a fitness example. My one of my close cousin Steven has been exercising his whole life. He's been on sports teams, weightlifting. He's about the same age as me. We weightlift together. I had no athletic ability growing up. I did nothing related to weightlifting until maybe 8 years ago. No matter how hard I try, his body has this advantage because of the duration that he's been doing it, but also because he did it during a critical time period when I wasn't doing it that really helped his brain sort of tune into that more. And that's why you can see people that can do spectacular things with their bodies that started at a really young age. Think about like Olympic athletes and things like that. That's an advantage. I'm describing this in a positive way, right? But like with your phone, it can be sort of the same thing, right? Like, what are the consequences of how your brain is developing, how your social skills are developing, if your predominant way of interacting is over text message rather than something in person, if you never getting exposed to longer form content, right? That actually is thinking something through, that's actually describing something in a more complicated way with many layers to it, rather than what's kind of a soundbite.
This is, man, I so I've thought a lot about long form content versus short form. Anyone in the space of podcasting or putting out any kind of promotional material, trying to get people to watch, we know the differences, but and when the like hits have to come. But thinking about it in a way that it's literally shaping a young brain and what that young brain will be tolerant to or able to do as it matures, is a really, I don't want to say it's a scary concept. It's a little scary to me.
I mean, I worry about reading a lot. That's something that we put a lot of effort as a society into developing, and we did that so that everyone can go from learning to read to reading to learn, right? Because that's
Right.
where books are where so much of our more sophisticated knowledge as a civilization are locked away in. um, Now, at the same time, look, let's not be super negative about this all the time here. Like, people go through these books and they turn it into good content on social media. Like, that's stuff that does happen. I think that the other problem there that we get into is that you have no way of evaluating the legitimacy of what's being sort of presented to you, and certainly the system is not evaluating that either. And that's a larger problem, and it pulls you in, right? So the stuff that shows up on the top is the stuff that creates the most reactions, which actually has nothing to do with whether it's accurate or not, right? Like, it's
Or
sort of what's
valuable or
yeah. I mean, think about, like, it's like I mean, my friends likes to joke that we have the New York Post here in the city, and right, so and the New York Post makes everything very exciting. Like, they always manage to, like, because that's sort of what's going to get the most attention, and they do that probably in a sort of like thinking way, right? Like the way an old school newspaper would. Whereas the algorithm does it in just sort of a like mathematical concept way.
It's really, really interesting, and I want to talk about algorithms. I think that's a good segue because I think more and more people are sort of getting hip to this. The fact that the algorithm is in control of not only what you're seeing, but knowing what you want to see to keep you scrolling. And I want to talk about talking to our kids about algorithms because one of the most alarming things that I saw this week was when a 13-year-old boy signs up for TikTok, he will be shown an Andrew Tate video within the first 6 videos as a tester. And we know based on gender, based on your location in the world, based on your age, that there are certain things that are going to be tested out on you and they're radical. And if you watch them, you will see more. And all of a sudden, there's this echo chamber. So I want to talk to you for a second about the algorithm, being aware of the algorithm, how people can do this, and how we can sort of teach our kids to be aware of the algorithm.
Yeah, my hope is that we start integrating this more and more into like our early foundational teachings for like current youth, because the ideas of algorithms making decisions is not a blip in the historical books. It is the future. Like no matter what we do, like all we can do is hope that we do it in a way that is largely positive, but it's not going anywhere. And it has a lot of power, and it will have a lot of power because these algorithms, as they get developed, they'll be developed. Hopefully, this is some of the stuff I do in my lab, where we're also putting in like rules around like what's appropriate and like what's not appropriate and like what's ethical. And IBM has this really nice series for anyone who's super nerdy on like AI, and they have these like super nerd computer science people like drawing on whiteboards, explaining it to you in a very lay way. And I think more people need to understand that because they're interacting with devices that are doing things, and they need to understand sort of how the device is making that decision. That's a critical thinking skill, because otherwise you're just doing whatever the device tells you to do, and now you're like a mindless automaton. How do you actually understand it enough so that you can navigate it beyond whatever the sort of decision making tree from an algorithm has come out for? Because that's what a lot of companies are talking about doing with jobs, right? I mean, like we're getting off topic from kids, but like kids will have to go through these jobs, right?
I mean, the idea is new to me that like I'm going to control the algorithm isn't going to control me. Like if I'm in the mood for a funny video and I stop at like a tragic video, and I've had to, it's really hard too. I've found this with myself that the things that I'm drawn to aren't necessarily the things that are good for me.
Yeah, to say, you said something earlier about like what they're going to show you more of what you want, and I actually don't know that that's correct. They're going to show you what you react to
Yes.
most. Uh, Want, I don't know what you want. That's a more complicated thing, but like react is more like a foundational sort of like uh, gut experience.
Right.
Like I'm like a huge nerd with computers, and like I'm like an Apple fanboy, and so like my Apple news feed, no matter what I try to do, tells me about every single new announcement related to Apple, and I must keep looking at it because I would like it to show me other things, but it shows me so much of that, and I do like it, right? But I'd actually, there's not even a way for me other than maybe for deleting my profile or something like that. It's very difficult for me to shift it. But I try to at least be mindful of that's what it's doing. And I've actually created other news applications that I use where I intentionally try to like look at different stuff so that I will get something else. Because you want a diverse understanding of the world,
That
especially
understanding.
for a youth, right? Especially for youth.
Yes,
Yeah.
that understanding of the algorithm and the understanding that that is happening. I think that is such a powerful thing, just on its base, like just knowing that it's going on as you're participating is so important. Do you think most kids are hip to that? Do you think that they know?
I think they know the word and they have a concept of it, that's like an amorphous entity. Um, and my favorite ones are the ones that talk about it a little bit like it's their enemy. And I'm like, that's not a terrible strategy. Like, but I think it's worth knowing that it's at present, the ones that you interact with on social media, it's pretty clear that um, they're not being cleaned up or safeguarded in a way that is thinking about that. Like that's just and they're not going to, right? Like if I'm a large tech company, I'm just not motivated to do this. You sort of have to make me do this. And that has, I mean, a little bit has happened recently with pushing back on tech companies, but they still have that, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to be aware of it also in our use patterns. So like going back to kids, I would keep my child away from a screen for as long as I possibly can do it. I don't know how long that is. I may be a parent that ends up caving with iPads in the car very early, but like delaying the screen as long as possible. And TV is also a screen, right? Let's not forget that. My, we don't think of it in that way, but like, you ever like walk into a room with a whole bunch of people watching TV? They're not mindlessly scrolling, but they all are often sort of like stuck in this thing, right? My grandma used to call it the boob tube. I guess that was like a term from a long time ago. But so reducing, rather than delaying the entry of screens, right? So that you can be fostering more creative things with their hands, puzzles, Legos, your time, like what your child wants most from you and will benefit most from you, is your time and attention. I cannot say that enough. And so delaying that, then phone. Oh my God, please. All you anxious parents out there, like they're going to be okay. Like, let's delay the phone. They don't need it as early as I think a lot of us want to. In fact, I think as a society, it would be very reasonable to start setting expectations around that. And I'm excited by a lot of the schools that are pushing back against this. Like, they don't need to be on their phone. They're there to learn. That's their job. Their job is to go to school and learn.
Quick interruption, guys. We are always talking about the importance of community to help you along your journey, to keep you motivated, to surround you with like-minded people. And we have a massive, massive community to do just that. If you haven't already, get in our fitness group on Facebook, Fitness Programming by CVG. Get on our app, CVG Nation. We've got hundreds of thousands of women on there who are just waiting to cheer you on. And we cannot wait to meet you. Get with us on our channels. We love to see you there. So give me an age. I know you don't want to put in a box, and I know kids are different, and we're going to talk about neurodivergent kids in a second, but give me a baseline for a typical developing neurotypical kid. When should we try to hold the phone off? Because they want to know, well, when can I have it?
Oof. This is what I've seen parents do that I love the most is if you really want them to have a device so you can find them, which is the main reason parents are concerned, is get them a Apple Watch or some sort of watch that has LTE. So like I have one right here, right? So like you can locate them. It's charged regularly. You can call them. Can they text? Yes, but like in a very sort of limited way. They could use it for fitness purposes. Like it gives you all the safety concerns, but it's not. No one is staring at their watch mindlessly all day. It's designed in a limited way. So I like the integration of the watch as a first step. Physical phones, I mean, high school, I really
Yes.
think is a, like around when you'd be like maybe driving, like, because we want to think about like development in like an independence thing, right? So like then, adolescence is this time where they're sort of separating from you guys as the parent and trying to figure stuff out on their own, but they're screwing up all the time. So you want them to be able to come back to you so you can guide them and move them forward through that. But their brain is like kind of developed, right? Everyone who has an adolescent knows that like they're both like an adult and a very small child all in one package. And you never know what you're going to get. So that's my ideal. The watches, I think middle school in a watch is fine. I really think any of these devices for them to personally have before middle school, I just don't think it's really necessary. I can't think of a need that they would have for it.
Yeah, I put a what are those little Apple the
Air tags?
I put an air tag. My son wanted to start going out on his bike in the neighborhood,
You're
so I
air
put
tagging him.
it. Yeah, that's what I did. So I can like I want to let him,
So it reduces your anxiety, even though he probably would be fine,
he will very much be fine. But
right?
but also he okay. So on that note, um, neurodivergent people, are they more susceptible to the downfalls, let's say, of both social media and phone use? Are they more at risk? Are their brains sort of doing different things with the feedback that they're getting from the devices?
I think that the short answer is that they're probably a higher risk group than
Okay.
everyone else is. So why might they be a higher risk group? ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition where we see that the brains of people with ADHD tend to be, at least parts of them, behind in their development, at least in certain areas, which is why they seem impulsive for their age, or their attention seems not sufficient for the age. And so that leaves them that, maybe they're 12, and there are many ways that they're 12. There might even be some ways that they're 14, but there's a whole bunch of ways that they're like 7. Okay. So it's there. If you think of their all the skills or abilities you'd expect like a 14-year-old to have, a 14-year-old male, maybe there's 12 different dimensions of things. Most of them, they might be around where they need to be or above, but a whole bunch of them they're going to be below on. And that's a much more complicated picture than you would see in like a non-neuro, or rather a neurotypical person. So those gaps are where things sort of go wrong. Maybe their judgment isn't as developed yet. They're more impulsive.
Yeah, it's a constant reminder, and I love that you provided it as well, to that those developmental pieces are going to be 1 to several years behind, and
Which
you
is
know,
okay too,
which
right? Like it's like,
right. 100%. It's okay, but just keeping that in mind with the set expectations and what you're going to be able to sort of give a neurodivergent kid as far as responsibilities. Prefrontal cortex is real. Sometimes it can be a real struggle, and the ways that neurotypical kids might be able to say, I'm gonna take a break from my phone right now. um,
it may be harder for them to do that. Yes, absolutely. And also kids that are struggling with strong self-esteem issues, which is common, right? I mean, that's a very common thing for in some ways it feels like in many age groups more have that problem than don't. That's going to leave them susceptible to the image. So think about like body image effects that you're going to get from social media. That is something that has, I mean, it's pretty apparent. And in not just in young females, but in males. I was at my gym today, and there was like a guy there who was enormous. I spoke to him. He's like 21, and I was talking with my trainer about him. We were both like, "Oh my god!" Like we were trying to figure out, like, any way that he could have done that without steroids, and we just could not come to the conclusion that it was possible for him to have achieved that without steroids. And I'm just like, shoot, like, and this is all over social media. So it's actually both sides, and like he probably did this when he was, I don't know, like a kid to me, like 17, 18, and I that makes, just like an eating disorder makes me uncomfortable. This makes me pretty uncomfortable for that to be happening at such a young age.
You've done so much research on specifically the correlation between heavy social media use and depression, anxiety, loneliness, even suicidal ideation. And this is much more prevalent in kids. Can you talk to us a little bit about your findings on that?
I think the most significant thing to think about is something that we kind of stumbled upon in an analysis. So, we have a graph here where you can see how the number of hours of screen time you have is connected to the probability of reporting depression. And at about 5 hours a week as compared to 20 hours a week, which again, 20 hours a week is not that much screen. I said screen time too. I didn't say social media. I said screen time. So that's a lot of things.
Mhm.
20 hours a week is what, like less than a little under 3 hours a day. You double your probability of depression when you go from 5 to 20. Okay. You go from 20 to 40, you double that probability again. Now, it's important to remember that that's not a causal statement. Like, I want to be clear that this is a correlation. It's a very strong correlation, and that depressed people are also probably more likely to be using their screens. But I'm also really sure that them using their screens all the time is probably making their depression worse, right? They're sitting in front of a screen when you're depressed. Like, you should be out. What are the things you could be doing to improve your depression besides like pharmacology and psychotherapy? You should be outside getting natural sunlight, not blue light from your phone that is almost surely disrupting your sleep cycle and melatonin release. And you should be fostering as many physical inter-person relationships as possible. Like, communities, like 150 people, that's like our ideal number of like close people we can know. You want to be getting out there and engaging in that kind of way. You want to be in nature. You want to be, maybe you want to practice intentionality around gratitude and kindness. There's so many sort of psychosocial things you can be doing for yourself with your depression that's not your being on your phone or
Exercise.
being on your screen in general, being on the screen in general, actually.
Mhm.
Because screens are new. We haven't had them that long. I mean, TVs predate the two of us, but still not that long ago.
Still,
From an
I mean,
evolutionary point of view,
yeah.
our brains are not that different than our grandparents' brains that maybe remembered when these things first started appearing.
It's such an important that chart is mind-blowing to me. First of all, I appreciate you saying, about correlation and causation and how those are different, but that still cannot be denied. You look at that and you say to yourself, um, people who are high functioning are not engaging in massive amounts of screen time. And I want to talk about video games for a second, because I know you're doing a really good job of using the term screen time, which like includes, every screen that you can think of, including TV and binge watching and all of those kind of things. But I think a lot of parents do not put video games in the same category as like social media. And should they be?
I think we should, in general, be limiting the amount of time we're staring at an artificial screen.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a good idea across the board. Video games, especially multiplayer video games, where they are actually interacting with someone they know, they're on a headset, or maybe they're all playing the video game together in the same room. That one bothers me less because there are other things going on, right? They are interacting with another individual. They're talking to each other. They're working on a team. They're separating and working in separate ways. They're teaching each other stuff. There's a group dynamic going on there, and sometimes it's even in person. Is it still something that we should have limits on? Yes, but it doesn't concern me as much, both because it's closer. It can have the collaborative in-person aspects that we want youth and all of us to be having. One, and two, it doesn't have the, I don't know, the slightly nefarious design to it,
Okay.
in terms of like trying to keep you there forever.
I think, in general, I think parents have a little bit easier of a time with setting limits on gaming than they do maybe on the phone use because of, all right, I want to talk to you about the ultimate fear as a parent. Everybody has a phone. And I'm the only one who doesn't have one. And I get left out of everything. They plan parties without me. I don't know what's going on in my social groups and my friend groups. There's all these inside jokes that I'm not a part of. And now I'm a leper. So thank you so much, mom and dad,
I
for
hate you. I hate you.
I hate
That's it.
you. I'm
I
a
hate you.
social
You're the
outcast.
worst parent ever.
So, okay. First of all, does this have any truth? Are they susceptible to social loneliness in the real world from
Yeah,
not
that is their social. We need to accept that the ship has sailed on this in younger generations. Okay, like we can't just
having them?
take this away from them. It's just not a realistic plan, because that is true. But we can find like a medium between doing nothing and like taking it all away. And I think that ways to do that are like sundown times, like sunset times on the phone. Like, oh, that's something we talked about a while ago as a society, and it sort of kind of has been forgotten about. But like, what's a time where like the device is just like not being used?
Yeah.
And that's a consistent time that we have. Just like you give a warning about a video game, oh, you have 15 minutes left, save your thing. Same thing with the phone. What's a time that thing gets put away? And ideally, the whole household is doing that, right? Getting back to that modeling thing. I think delaying when they get it is the other one to do. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be listening and be like, well, too late for that. They already have it. But I still want to say that because it's easier to slow it down and prevent it than it is to try to yank us back in the other direction. So I think having limitations around that, I think that as your kid gets older, helping them see, like, you can look in your device and see how much time you spend on stuff, and sitting with them and thinking about that with them a little bit. Now, different individual kids are going to be able to make sense of this at different levels. So I leave you guys as parents to sort of ask yourself what's a developmentally appropriate way to have a conversation with them, because it's complicated. It's math, and you have to, but I think getting them to sort of think about that is useful, because I will look at that sometimes, like, and I will be like, oh, or when it sends me that report of like my screen time is significantly up this week, I go back and I'm like, why have I been on my device so much? So I think that's another nice way to sort of think about it. The other way is, can we limit the applications that they're on, in terms of how they're communicating? Maybe like, we're never going to limit. Instagram has a limit when they're not on Instagram anymore. That's not the cool one anymore. But whatever they're on now,
It's just us. We're on this.
yeah. I mean, like, I was with some like Gen Z folks that are my students, and they're like, Instagram is like so dead, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what's going on in the
You
world.
can't even they're like offended by it. They're like instant.
They're like offended. They're like offended by it. I know. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, boomer. Like, I'm like, oh my God.
Like, whoa, ouch. My generation started that, guys. Whoa, ouch. Um,
It
uh,
was artsy.
yeah. So, but maybe they're allowed to be in their group chats. Okay. Like, so, if they're just chatting with their friends, and they're still, or there may still be like a sunset time on their phone, but maybe that has more time access available to it than like a specific social media application.
Do you have an app that you're a hard no for kids?
Do I have an app that I'm a hard no?
I think that, I talked to a couple kids before this to try to, because yes, they're not on Instagram. We're like totally way behind. I talked to a few kids, and it seems, and this is obviously like geographical too, but it seems Snapchat
Yeah,
is
Snapchat is popular.
the one. Do we?
do we want to say universally that there's one app that like is just not great for kids to be on, or do we want to monitor what they're doing on it?
I don't think there's enough of a clear distinction between these things to be
Yeah.
able to do that. I think is really the problem, because all of them have like mixed use situations. Uh, right? Like, I mean, it's just that's sort of like, I love Reddit. That's probably the one that I enjoy the most, and it's a lot of like, learning and discussions and things like that. There's like really obnoxious, toxic-y, culty like things on Reddit, and then there's like people talking about like, I want to buy like this used Porsche, and like, what do you think of this one? Like, I mean, there's all kinds of things on. There's people, I'm sure, talking about the World Cup, like, so there's a variety of stuff on there, and I think we need to be aware of that. I also think we need an education system similar to what I remember getting in middle school for the internet, which was anyone can make a website, and just because there's a website, I remember distinctly a librarian saying this to me, it doesn't mean that it's true. You understand that, right? Like, because like, and there's really no filtration process. There's no screening process. Like, if a book, for instance, has to go through like an editor, there's all kinds of like barriers it goes through to sort of curate what actually is presented. A website doesn't really have that, and neither does a social media account.
Such a good, I also sat through that same, we were literally transitioning from
Yeah,
books to the internet as an
like
information.
Dewey Decimal and like the flipping card system and everything. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that was a huge transition, and we were just going and so what happened? What's baby turtle like? And who knows what would come up? And they literally had to sit there and say, not everything is going to be factual there. Not everything is going to be peer reviewed. And I think that, yeah, I think that just, I don't know that many
Like,
kids know
just like
that.
you would look at someone's account and say, "Oh my god, I'm so jealous of their life. It's so perfect." And it's like, no, this is not their life. This is like, this is not their life. This is the curated version of their life that they are making a career out of, and like a hustle. This is not their life. Like,
And probably making money off of if
yeah,
you're.
hopefully for them this is what they're doing. But how do we understand that that's not a fair comparison for you? It's not even an appropriate comparison for you.
I think a lot of adults need that reminder and like fix ourselves before we can even promote that to kids, because there's just so much of like comparison is the thief of joy, and really truly social media has pumped that up to like a degree that, I mean, it's really hard to tell the difference between if you literally suck at everything or if that's just the person's highlight reel.
Hey, you. Thanks for getting in touch with the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast.
We love your questions and adore hearing from you.
Leave us a hello,
A burning question,
feedback.
or anything else you want to share with us on the podcast.
We will play your message live on air if we can.
Thanks for being an amazing friend. Stay safe and moving.
I wanted to ask you about a little bit about Sultan Lab, because you use big data to understand the negative consequences that social media has on mental health. And this is pretty specific to kids. So that we can create better guidelines and recommendations. I wanted to ask you, what is big data?
Yeah, so we work with any number of databases. Some of them are going to be like electronic health records. So, you go to the doctor, and if let's say you're in one system, we have here in New York Presbyterian, all of your records are collated into one electronic system, and they're organized. And then I, on the back end, can do something where we essentially remove everything that identifies you. So like you're now an anonymized version of yourself, putting together thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of records. And then we can then use those records and chart them and graph them and look for analyses to see different patterns, different associations that we might see. So you can do that with an electronic health record. You can do that with an insurance database. Like, what is the stuff that we give to insurance companies as doctors to bill for you? So what medication did you take? What kind of visit you had? How often it was? What was your diagnosis? Again, totally de-identified, totally anonymous. And then we have survey data. And that data is most of it's the federal government does like yearly surveys where they look at different things. Like vaping has been something that they've been looking at a lot, and like substance use. The one that I talked about related to depression and screen time, that's coming out of a data set that the government funds called the ABCD trial, where we are watching a whole bunch of kids. I think there's about 4,000 of them. And we started watching them when they were like 6 or 7, and we're following them, and they get every 6 months, every year, all of these assessments to monitor for things, because we're trying to figure out like when do certain conditions start to show up? How does maybe social media use start to factor into that? How does screen time factor into that? Do people develop substance use problems then go on to develop depression and anxiety, or did they have the depression and anxiety and then the substance use? Same thing with the screen time. Where does screen time just start to get worse after someone gets a depression or an anxiety diagnosis, or was it the other way around?
That's crazy interesting. Is there any findings so far that have like absolutely blown your mind?
I think the one that it was most striking for me was the association with number of hours of screen time and
Yeah.
reporting a depressed mood. It's really because it's just not that much. Like 20 hours a week is like 2.8 hours a day of screen time. Like that feels like nothing. I feels like nothing. One of my students was joking with me. They're like, geez, we do like 8 hours of screen time here. Like, and I'm like, oh no, I feel bad.
So I was going to ask you about that because so when you were talking about delaying screen time for as long as
but just to go back to the student, it's also, we didn't get at this. What you're doing with your screen time probably matters,
okay.
right? Like, if you are reading a Kindle book, if you're listening to like an audiobook, which I'd count as screen time, if you're like on a video chat with a family member or a close friend, this is screen time right now. You're doing a podcast.
Right.
Like those are different. Those are probably have different effects than I think what we're more concerned about, which is things that are influencing us at kind of like almost like an unconscious level, things that are sort of like mindless. And we all are guilty of this, right? The like mindless stuff on your phone, or stuff that we think is like I think inaccurate and like changing our ideas around the world of the world or around us in a way that's really just not true. I mean, that upsets me every time I like think about that, and that to me that's like not a political problem, a partisan. That's like a universal problem that we all have.
It's seeing it develop in adults is misinformation is something that has been talked about so much, but one of the things that's the most frightening for me is that there's a whole generation coming up behind that has not been told that you look in a book to make sure it's true, and it's a little scary.
I mean, my answer to that is that parents, we all need to come together and start pushing for some kind of regulation around this, because it's at this point it's a little crazy that the thing that is arguably like the most important like technology we have, which is any sort of like internet based technology, is essentially unregulated.
Wild.
Right? And there are all kinds of reasons why it's unregulated and it's be difficult to regulate or whatnot, but it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. Okay, it would be a lot easier. It'd be a lot easier as a parent to say, No, you can't have Snapchat. You're 12 years old. If there was regulations saying no one can have Snapchat until they're 16. I think it's really hard as a parent to sort of stand out on this limb and be alone, feeling like you're standing alone on this, and feeling as if your kid might be missing out when the solution is really, really clear that the
You have
data
to
shows.
tolerate your kid being annoyed at you a little bit. That's the reality. And you have to
Are you
tolerate.
even parenting if they're not? Are you even parenting?
I mean, I think that's an interesting question, right? So, like, some of our jobs when we're parents are to tolerate them being irritated and frustrated with us because we're doing something that we know they think is selfish for us, but we know is actually harder for us as the adult and is in their best interest in the long run. And parents need to feel empowered by that, right? Like there's a major, this is a totally off topic, but there's like a major cultural problem that I see in the parents that I work with in a lot of areas, which is like this idea that like I want my kid to be comfortable all the time. I want my kid to feel happy and included and not have negative, what I worry about is might be negative experiences. And that can be taken to a point that I think is actually destructive.
It's called snow plowing. Us moms call it snow plowing. We plow the way so there's no discomfort. There's also no resilience built. So
And then there's no
congrats.
resilience, right? And like also not life, like not doing them any favors, not doing them any favors.
Oh man, we drink out of hoses. We drink out of hoses. So then we went like, okay, let's plow the whole way. And maybe it really is just a little bit of a mix where sometimes you drink out of a hose and sometimes, your parent steps in and gives you a boost. But really, that idea of building resilience through hardships and uncomfortable situations is like, I don't know any other way to do it.
And that's what, when parents are having trouble with this, like I remind them, it's harder, but you're actually doing the thing that is the better parenting thing. Like, and your kid doesn't know any better. So like, like like they can have an opinion, but I don't know that they, their vote needs to be developmentally appropriate, right?
Their vote needs to be developmentally appropriate. Your vote counts for how many years you've been here. So your vote counts for 6, and my vote counts for 40. So
That's
good
an
luck.
easy way to do it. That's an easy way to do
I'm
it.
sorry, I outvoted you right there. It's 40-6.
That's actually an interesting way. It'd be interesting to test that and see how that works. But it does factor in the idea that like, hey, like I know you, young person, know your world really well. And I may not know it as well as you do, but I know larger things about the world and where you need to go. And I'm trying to factor those in your experiences as a youth.
And trusting that you know better is a really hard thing. And like you said before, our own phone use has to be in control before we can set any kind of realistic or even believe it to be a problem, right? If we're just unlimited screen time, then how would we ever come full stop and say like, well, maybe this isn't the greatest thing for my kid? I mean, it's all right. So I want to end with, we've talked a little bit about, you want the phones out of schools. I'm with you. We're delaying screen time as much as we can in young children, and we are delaying actually giving them a phone as long as we can, knowing that there are other options available for, tracking them and, telling them to come home for dinner and stop drinking out of the hose. Are there any musts? Like, you can snap your fingers right now, and every single parent is going to implement this in their household. What do you want us to do to get better control over our screen time?
I think it's a like a time where there's a kibosh on on phones. Like that's just it. Like it's this time on weeknights, it's this time on a Saturday, it's this time on a Sunday, and that's it. And that's just the rule, and it has to go away, and that's it.
I love that.
Because they're everything that they might want to do. I promise you, there's a way that they could do it without their phone, or it's not something they need to be doing past that certain time.
You know, as an adult, I really always try to check myself on this of, you know, saying that I didn't have time for that. I didn't have time for that. And then I look at how much time I spent on social media and went, maybe you did have time for that. And I think that it's a really good, an important thing to just remind kids that there's a lot out there going on. It's not just all right here.
Well, and show them it, right? Model it, show them, do it with them, participate in it. That's really what's, I think, gonna convince them of that, right? It's because it's you're putting, you know, you've got your own, you're buying in to this thing that you're asking them to buy into.
I absolutely love that. And what a better way to do anything than to model it. Dr. Ryan, thank you so much. This was such an important conversation. I feel like I got so much out of it, and I know our listeners will as well. Can you tell them where they can hear more from you, get in touch with you, like see what you're up to with your research? Are you on social media, Dr. Ryan Sultan?
I am a failed social media account at the moment, but we've made it, and like there's like no followers. We've like done nothing with it. So the best way to reach us is our website. So it's www.integrative-psych.org. I'm sure we'll put some links in the episode that you can go and check out our practice. And if you're curious about the lab, it's there's a redirect. Go to sultanlab.org and it'll take you right to my Columbia page.
I am so happy that you took the time out today. This is such an important conversation, and I really think you did such a great job of making it doable and also realistic. Dr. Ryan, thank you so much.
My pleasure. So nice to meet you. So nice to talk.
Beautiful. Yes.